federal judges who were appointed by both Republican and Democratic administrations, including a federal judge appointed by Donald Trump, all in Washington, D.C., essentially saying the same thing. Donald, do not pardon the January 6th insurrectionists whose cases we presided over. It will be very dangerous. These are dangerous, convicted felons who tried to kill police officers, who tried to overthrow democracy, who were involved in other criminal enterprises as well, even before the January 6th insurrection. These are people who led these essentially terroristic organizations to try to undermine and overthrow democracy and prop up fascism. And you have Judge Beryl Howell, an Obama appointee, federal judge Royce Lamberth, a Reagan appointee, Judge Carl Nichols, a Trump appointee, Amit Mehta, Obama appointee. Pretty much every federal judge in D.C. And why D.C.? That's where these January 6th cases were tried for the better part of like 3 years. And these judges saw dozens, in some cases hundreds, of these cases where 1,500, 2,000 or so convictions were secured. The DOJ had almost a perfect, flawless record on all of these cases. It may have lost like one bench trial on certain counts on the issue of intent, but by and large, these serious terroristic criminals who participated, and by the way, the reason I'm using that language is that in some of the sentencing of these individuals, there were terroristic enhancements because of their underlying conduct as well. So I'll give you an example, Harry, and then we'll talk about this. So Judge Amit Mehta, in an unrelated sentencing of a co-conspirator of Stuart Rhodes, the leader of the Oath Keepers, who was put in jail for essentially the rest of his adult life. Amit Mehta goes, look, anyone who cares about democracy, it is a frightening proposition that Stuart Rhodes could ever be pardoned. The notion that Stuart Rhodes could be absolved is frightening and ought to be frightening to anyone who cares about democracy in this country. And that's similar to what Judge Carl Nichols, a Trump appointee, said about a number of these insurrectionists as well. And so, Harry, let me toss it to you. This is an issue that you've been focused on a ton. I mean, look, Trump has been singing, at all of Trump's events, right? We covered this here, and corporate media didn't seem to care about this at all. Trump would replace the national anthem with the J6 anthem of some of the most violent insurrectionists. Trump lent his name, image, and likeness to the J6 Awards Gala, he called it, which took place at the Trump National Golf Club in Bedminster. Trump released the single song, Justice for All, with January 6th insurrectionists. You had people like Enrique Tarrio leading up to the insurrection at the White House in the residency area, snapping photos with "Never thought I'd be here," last-minute invite to an undisclosed location. Wow, I'm in awe. We'll flash those pictures right now. Harry, what do you make of all of this?
This is vile. It's gonna the moment when he the cases are still being brought, and as you said, this is the biggest operation in the history of the Department of Justice. Over 1,500 folks. So you're talking about people on the bench who have all experienced it, and what they're saying. This chorus is every bit as diverse and broad as you say. It hasn't been picked up so much. But there's just been, other stuff happening, but you have judges who are just stunned and apoplectic. They saw the evidence. It played before juries. We all saw this confusing melee on January 6th, but they have the individuals who come in and harm officers and disrespect Congress, and the details are just mind-boggling. And what a sort of complete division in society when Trump does this. Now these guys, Trump has called them heroes and patriots. So how is it going to work? You mentioned Stuart Rhodes, who's a ringleader, got as much as anyone. Well, if it's a heroic, patriotic mission, these guys ought to be sprung, the more responsible they were, the more heroic they are. And just what's happening now in front of judges who are used to being respected by criminal defendants, you have people essentially snubbing their nose at them as they're sentenced and saying, ha, 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 don't worry, I'll be out soon. So it's not simply the disrespect for the law and judicial authority, but the casualness and cavalier attitude toward, one of maybe next only to the Civil War, the biggest kind of insurrection and threat to democracy and peaceful transfer of power we've ever seen. And this is going to be, I think this will be one that will be for the history books and will wear very badly. But when you have judges, first of all, judges even speaking up at all, they've sort of checked in with one another. They wouldn't normally do it, but they are horrified at the notion that the people they've seen in front of them and the evidence that they've had juries kind of absorb would somehow be pardoned. For starters, you're not even supposed to give it to violent offenders. And these aren't just violent offenders, they're constitutional villains. So, the judges have taken an oath, and the fidelity of the Constitution really is being trammeled. It's that you have this wide and this loud, which is any volume at all coming from the federal bench, tells you that this is going to be really a matter of revulsion among so many.
And just think, Judge Carl Nichols is the same federal judge who basically knocked out in the first instance the obstruction of official proceeding, the 1512 C2 charge, and ultimately the Supreme Court agreed with Judge Carl Nichols, but Nichols went out of his way when other judges weren't ultimately that's what the Supreme Court found was the law, but in my opinion, kind of handing some of these insurrectionists a gift who are being charged with obstruction of official proceeding. And Nichols said, you know what? No, it's got to actually be the actual harming of the documents or shredding of documents. It can't just be involving some other official proceeding. There's got to be more. So to be clear, it's not like Judge Carl Nichols, is like, if you thought that Trump would potentially get any sympathy over a pardon for January 6th insurrectionists, maybe if you didn't know Carl Nichols' background, perhaps, but you would think this guy on paper seems somewhat sympathetic to the insurrectionists or to some of them based at least on his 1512 C2 ruling. When you go into Nichols' background, that's not necessarily the case, but you have Judge Carl Nichols joining forces with Beryl Howell, Obama, Lambert Reagan, Amit Mehta, Obama. And it feels a little coordinated in a way. I think it is. Judges talk, Harry, right?
Yeah,
they go to a judge cafeteria, they have coffee with each other, they go to functions with each other. Yeah. So I'm sure there's collegiality where they're saying, hey, this is going to be really effed up if this happens, huh?
Yeah, and you put it exactly right. And you made another point, by the way, that this is going to be. You're going to have these people. Normally, you think of someone who gets clemency or pardon as being contrite. It's not. You don't have to be, but that's how you think of people and have their life of crime behind them. You're going to have people who are redoubled now in their resolve and enthusiasm for being basically terrorist goons, right? You're going to have people who are going to be arrested on gun charges and are going to be, but they're also going to have other kinds of arrests and crimes. And each of those is going to be like a total reliving of the injury. You say, I don't see who could possibly support it. And some of the things that Trump has done really make us scratch our heads. There are going to be the biggest core of his supporters who are, chopped at this whole thing. But you got to imagine, as an example of a point you've made and others, that people who voted for Trump didn't necessarily vote for what he wants to do. man, when this goes down, I think he's kind of painted himself into a corner, and it is going to go down. It's going to be, I think, deeply, deeply offensive to a lot of people, including those who voted for him.
Yeah, I think day one, Trump said in the first 9 minutes, that's what he's going to do. We'll see. But also Trump's promise that the prices of eggs were going to go down immediately on day one, that the stock market was going to be higher, even though Biden's stock market was about 50% higher than Trump's stock market. Trump promised he was going to end the Ukraine war, Russia's unlawful invasion, on day one as well. And so these were all the promises that he made. People bought into him. And now I think we'll see what those ramifications are. But you and I will be here on the front lines reporting every step of the way. I get my legal news from this guy right here, Harry Litman, at the Talking Feds YouTube channel, the Talking Feds Substack, the Talking Feds podcast, Meidas Mighty. Make sure you subscribe to all of those. Just search Talking Feds YouTube's Talking Feds on Substack, and Talking Feds wherever you get your podcast. Thanks, Harry.
Thanks, Ben. Talk to you soon. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.